So, spoilers, season day 3. Well, okay, it's kind of like day 3. I mean, I'm not really counting the weekend. They don't really put too many spoilers out on the weekends, and I also didn't work over the weekend either. But yeah, I mean, spoiler season day 3 continues on. And if you haven't seen my episode from earlier today on Zur Eternal Schemer, make sure you check that one out, because this very well might be my favorite new commander. But don't leave just yet, because this new commander is, well, probably gonna make some players pretty salty. Because we finally have a legal mono black Braids. At least it hasn't been banned yet, and probably will never be banned. Anyways, Braids Arisen Nightmare is a 3/3 Nightmare. My goodness, that art is fantastic. That costs 1 black. And she says, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. So this is kind of, what should we call it, like fair stacks? Opt-out stacks? Something like that, where you could essentially say, we're all sacrificing things. But then the other player can say, I don't want to sacrifice something. So then instead of, them actually sacrificing something, they get hurt for that, again, losing 2 life, and you get a benefit drawing a card. So again, a quote-unquote fixed version of stacks. Because, yeah, probably the vast majority of playgroups out there that aren't playing CEDH aren't really okay with stacks. So, yeah, this is kind of, again, an opt-out version where, I mean, would the Braids player probably want everyone to have to sacrifice things? Probably. But it's still nice to still punish them for not doing so, and also getting a benefit for them not doing it either. I mean, again, assuming that all the other players opt out, sure, you lost 1 permanent, but you also drained 6 total life across 3 players. Again, assuming you got, a multiplayer game like Commander, 4 players, and you also just drew 3 cards. So yeah, I'm okay with sacrificing one of my things to get that much value. And at 3 mana, my goodness, Braids can come down early and often and really put the hurting on your opponents, or at least have to make them make some really tough decisions, and you're going to be getting a ton of value out of this from the get-go. Again, this is an end step trigger, not an upkeep trigger, end step. So you get it on the first end step that you just get Braids out for some immediate value. So yeah, there are some really powerful and spicy things that you can do with this new Braids. And if you are interested in building around this new commander, well, like all the other quick takes, essentially, I mentioned that in the comments below, there is a link to the list of cards I'm talking about on this episode, because when brand new commanders, come out, essentially, or spoiled, well, sometimes cards that work really well with that commander tend to go up in price sooner rather than later. So make sure you pick up some of those cards if you're interested in this new Braids. But now, of course, with all that said, let's jump into the cards. After, of course, I quickly mention, Braids, I'm sorry. I have worked at it over these years, trying to get the word out there that you need to be unbanned because, well, why not? But now that there is another mono black Braids that, is somewhat similar-ish to you, but, again, a fixed stacks, commander, essentially, let's just call it that. I highly doubt, even more so now, that you will ever be unbanned. So I am very sorry, original Braids, original mono black Braids, I should say. The blue Braids obviously has been legal this whole time, and it's quite obnoxious, but yeah, I'm very sorry, original Braids. Regardless, with this new Braids, though, yeah, you're going to want to get her out early and often, and my goodness, you can even just Dark Ritual her out on turn 1 if you really want to. I mean, obviously, Dark Ritual instant for, a black, gives you black, so yeah, just, play your swamp, get, Braids out, have fun. Again, keep in mind that Braids trigger is a May. I mean, if you really want to just show the table up, though, on turn 1, or again, they're turn 0 if they haven't gone yet, yeah, just get Braids out with Dark Ritual, and then sacrifice your land just to make a statement. Just be like, all right, play a Swamp, Dark Ritual, Braids, end step, sacrifice the land I just played. Yeah, that's right. Can you all sacrifice your land? Or I mean, even if you don't have a land, if you're on turn 0, you don't even have a land, you can't sacrifice one. And those who, who played the land on turn 1 aren't willing to sacrifice their land. So lose some life, I draw 3 cards. That's right. That's how this game is going. Now, of course, on top of that, on that turn, you could actually, just play like a Mem Knight or an Ornithopter or just some other 0 mana artifact that you can sacrifice as well for the same effect. But it really sends, a statement to your opponents when you're like, no, I'm sacrificing my one and only land. Take that. Now, speaking of sacrificing lands, there are actually a couple that you actually really might want to sacrifice. I mean, like Drownyard Temple can be a great one. It can tap Raycollis, and it can pay 3, to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. So this one you can keep getting back again and again and again. And you can just keep sacrificing it, and your opponents probably aren't going to be very likely to sacrifice lands because lands are a very valuable resource, especially earlier on in the game. Regardless, there are actually even lands that want to be sacrificed, like Dunes of the Dead and God's Eye. Because Dunes of the Dead says, when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and God's Eye is very similar, but you're going to make a 1/1 spirit. Regardless, again, you get 2 permanents for the price of 1, and again, the price of just essentially, playing a land and getting to your commander's trigger and sacrificing it. Again, you're probably going to be punishing your opponents for that, draining them some life, and you draw 3 cards essentially too, just for the price of 1 land, and you get a zombie token that, of course, you can then, next turn sacrifice for more value. Or again, I should say zombie token for Dunes and obviously spirit token for God's Eye. You know what I mean? Now, on top of sacrificing lands, which, isn't always going to be your typical play, you can actually really take advantage of this trigger with some cards, that you probably should sacrifice with cards like Demonic Pact and Treacherous Blessing. Demonic Pact says, at the beginning of upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. It deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards, draw 2 cards, or, you lose the game. Now, obviously, those first 3 modes are fantastic. That's a lot of value, but eventually you'd get to that 4th mode, and yeah, that one is really, really bad. Losing the game equals bad most of the time. But with Braids, you're like, okay, I just already got the value out of those 3, and now I'm at my end step, and let's just get rid of this. I don't really want this anymore. So again, unless your opponents have enchantments that they actually, can or want to sacrifice, you're getting value out of that. Or how about Treacherous Blessing, which says when enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Now, on top of that, there's just an eensy bit of a downside. Whenever you cast a spell, you lose 1 life, which obviously is not a good thing. But again, with this commander, you can just sacrifice it. And yes, okay, this does say whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Braids isn't targeting, you're just choosing. I know technicalities and differences, whatever. So yes, you can still sacrifice it with Braids and get that value when your opponents say, well, I don't have any enchantments to sacrifice, or I don't want to sacrifice my enchantment. And then they lose life and you draw cards. And yeah, Braids can provide you a ton of value and punish opponents quite effectively. And yes, that's exactly what your opponents sound like. Moving on, of course, there are plenty of artifacts that actually want to be sacrificed or, benefit you when others are sacrificed. Let's talk about things like Mirror Retriever, Scrap Trawler, and Ichor Wellspring. Mirror Retriever says when it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, you're already getting value when this hits the graveyard. And Braids is like, yeah, let's just, sacrifice you. Sure, your opponents are like, all right, I guess I'll have to sacrifice an artifact or creature, or you get extra value. And then you get even more value getting an artifact back. Scrap Trawler takes a step further, though. Whenever it or another artifact you control is put in your graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser mana value. Now, every single time you sacrifice an artifact, you are getting something lesser back. Or how about Ichor Wellspring, which has when it enters the battlefield or is put away graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So 2 mana, draw 2. Again, actually, essentially 2 mana, draw like potentially 5, basically, in combination with Braids and drain your opponents. Yeah, that sounds like it's going to be quite effective. And speaking of quite effective, of course, there are plenty of fantastic creatures that really want to be creature fodder for you. They want to be sacrificed. Cards like Shambling Gas, Nested Shambler, and Reassembling Skeleton, just name a few. Shambling Gas says when it dies, choose 1. Brave the Centaur creature Bow controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn, which, cool, okay, you can take out a tiny creature if you want, or more likely you're probably going to choose, create a treasure token. Which, of course, you can utilize that treasure token for mana. Great. Or, you can just utilize it with Braids. Your next step to sacrifice that to force your opponent to sacrifice artifacts. If not, you're getting extra value. So yeah, This 1 mana creature essentially has the potential to drain your opponents for 4 each. 4 each, that's 12 life total, plus drawing, essentially what, 6 cards, basically? Again, all of this value out of just a 1 mana creature. Speaking of which, Nested Shambler, also a 1 mana creature that gets you another token as well when it dies, in this case, a 1/1 squirrel. And actually, if you can increase its power, you get more, but yeah, at the very least, you're getting, again, 2 creatures for the price of 1. Or how about, a creature like Resummoning Skeleton, which is a fantastic one that you can keep getting back by paying 1 in a black. You can get it back from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is a fantastic source for repeatable creature fodder, and yeah, there are plenty of other creatures like this. So again, whereas you can just keep recurring value from your graveyard, your opponents probably aren't going to be able to do that, and because of that, well, they're not going to have things that they're going to want to keep sacrificing, and then you can keep generating more and more value, or again, taking down your opponents, either life totals, or their supply of creatures, or lands, or whatever you're sacrificing. And of course, when your things, especially your creatures, hit your graveyard, there are plenty of other ways to get a lot of value out of them with cards like Blightmound, Open the Graves, and Ogre Slumlord. Blightmound first up says attacking pests you control get +1/+0 and have menace, so that's nice, especially since this can make you a lot of pests. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So now whatever non-token creature you are sacrificing, whether it's one that actually gives you a benefit when it dies or not, you get an additional benefit. And again, that's another potential piece of creature fodder that you can sacrifice later with Braids for even more value. And of course, we can make even bigger creatures with something like Open the Graves. And whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Or we can actually benefit from our opponent sacrificing things as well with Ogre Slumlord. Because this one says whenever another non-token creature dies, you may create a 1/1 black rat creature token, and rats you control have Death Touch. So of course, this takes a step further by counting your opponent's creatures. And yeah, this can get out of hand quite quickly. Speaking of which, of course, there are also plenty of ways to get even more value out of sacrificing things. I mean, once you are set up, the value engine that you can generate with this commander is just absurd. Grim Harrowspec, Dark Prophecy, just name a few. Grim Harrowspec says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. So again, this does not count tokens, but you've got plenty of ways to sacrifice a lot of non-token creatures throughout the game. I mean, again, Resummoning Skeleton can just keep coming back again and again and again. So you can sacrifice it with your commander to punish your opponents and to draw even more cards. Again, on top of those cards you're going to be drawing for your opponents and not sacrificing things, you get even more with this. Or, of course, you can count all your creatures with Dark Prophecy. It says whenever a creature controlled dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So now you can say to your opponents, look, I'm not just punishing you. Look, I'm punishing myself too, okay? When my creatures die, with Braids, yes, if you're not sacrificing creatures, you lose life and I draw cards. But look, I'm also losing a life. Isn't that so tough for me? So yeah, things can get really absurd with this commander. And again, yeah, I mean, although, again, I am calling it the, like a fair version of stacks commander, essentially, that doesn't mean it can't be quite brutal and quite brutally effective. And speaking of brutal, well, we can drain our opponents even faster with cards like Zulport Cutthroat and, of course, Psychosis Crawler. Zulport Cutthroat says whenever it or another creature you control dies, your opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Again, we're going to be sacrificing a lot of things, most likely a lot of creatures, and yeah, this can drain our opponents incredibly quickly. I mean, and again, that's on top of all the other draining that we're already doing just with our commander. Speaking of which, Psychosis Crawler can be a massive threat throughout the game. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand, and yeah, we can keep our hand pretty full thanks to Braids, and whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So again, if our opponents don't decide to, join us in sacrificing things, well, they're going to get punished even further. So yeah, I mean, let's say everyone didn't decide to sacrifice whatever we sacrificed. We draw 3 cards, they lose 2 life, plus 3 from the cards that we drew with Psychosis Crawler. They're losing 5 life each for us sacrificing 1 thing. That is a lot of life lost and a lot of value for us. And yeah, there again are a lot of brutal things that you can do, even with this quote-unquote fair stacks commander. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Braids Arisen Nightmare. I am so happy Braids is back, and again that we finally have a legal mono black Braids. Now, will I stop trying to, say hashtag unban Braids? Maybe specifically that. Maybe it'll be like hashtag unban Braids Cabal Minion. I mean, that's a lot longer, but slightly more accurate than just saying, unban Braids. I mean, people already know. There's already another Braids. I'm rambling far too much about this. Unban Braids Cabal Minion. Because again, why not? Nevertheless, it is exciting to see a brand new Braids. Again, a quote-unquote fixed stacks version of Braids. And yeah, this thing can pack quite the punch quite early. Again, just think about that Dark Ritual turn 1 play is getting out and being like, this is what this game is about. Let's go. And of course, if you are interested in this brand new Braids, make sure you check out the card list link in the description below. And of course, make sure you check out my other quick takes and spoilers I've talked about so far. And make sure you're staying tuned for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers coming up right after I probably go get another coffee. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.